New York State and Kentucky have their presidential primaries tomorrow. In Kentucky, there are concerns about whether voters could be facing major delays, long lines, and other problems if turnout is high. Fewer than 200 polling places will be open because of COVID. That's compared to 3,700 in a typical year. Earlier this month, Georgia served as the latest example of serious voting problems that could affect elections this fall. Miles O'Brien has the story.
It was no walk in the park when Georgians cast their ballots on June 9th. Many voters, disproportionately Democrats and African Americans, spent 6 to 8 hours in line, patient yet peaked. At the Central Park Rec Center in Atlanta, I met Amelia Dobbs 4 hours into a grueling vote-a-thon.
So I'm very disappointed after being a voter for over 50 years. It's getting worse, worse, and worse. It can't get any worse than this.
John Dotson and his partner Yolanda Boris were just ahead of Ms. Dobbs in a line that encircled the park. They were livid.
It is 9:56. There are now eight ballots counted.
Scanned.
Eight ballots. This is an exercise in patience, but also it's an exercise in will. And if the intention is to break the will, those people are not leaving.
Inside, beleaguered poll workers struggled with a new, complex voting system that they hadn't even seen before the election. In-person training was deemed unsafe in the midst of a pandemic. Among other things, the passwords to log onto the machines, in plain view on the tables, didn't work. Marilyn Marks is executive director of the Coalition for Good Governance, an organization focused on election transparency and verifiability.
We don't necessarily have fair and secure elections across the United States. And Georgia is the epitome of problem elections. Georgia becomes really the example at almost every level of what is wrong.
Marks helped lead the charge to usher in a new era of voting in Georgia last year. For 18 years, the state used electronic voting machines made by Diebold Election Systems. The machines were widely used across the nation, even though experts proved they were easy for hackers to attack without leaving a trace.
A federal judge is ordering Georgia to stop using its outdated voting machines and
in August of 2019, a federal judge ordered the state to scrap the flawed machines for something more secure and verifiable. So the state spent more than $100 million to supply every county with so-called ImageCast machines made by a Canadian company, Dominion Voting Systems. They are ballot marking devices, meaning voters make selections on a touchscreen and ballots are printed with choices embedded in a QR code and listed in plain English. The paper ballot is then scanned and counted. Brad Raffensperger is Georgia's Secretary of State.
When you have a paper ballot, no matter how that really comes about, at the end of the day, you have the paper that you can do the audit from. And then you can audit the elections. That's something I think is more secure, because then we really capture voter intent.
But election security experts say that is not the case.
It's a computer, and you have no idea what's in the computer, and you have no idea what the computer is doing with the information that you give it.
Rich DeMillo is a professor of computer science at the Georgia Institute of Technology. He tried to stop Georgia from buying the Dominion system, now used in 24 states.
A ballot marking device is, in the first place, an extremely expensive pencil that will make mistakes, that is prone to failure, that is prone to misuse. And if it fails, if it's misused, you have no way of telling. If you use a ballot marking device, you don't have the original record of voter intent.
Are you concerned the system can be hacked?
No, we never take anything for granted. We are very vigilant. We understand that elections are tempting targets for hackers.
Indeed. At the hacker convention DEF CON, they have been making virtual mincemeat of electronic voting machines for years. Legendary white hat hacker and election security consultant Hari Hursty was part of the exploits.
You can introduce races which don't appear as when they should be. You can change the design on the screen to be misleading and confusing the voter. when the voters making the selections, are those selections recorded accurately?
The new voting system also includes electronic poll books made by a St. Louis company called KnowInk. Election officials say the devices frequently shut down and showed polling information for the wrong election, creating more havoc. But they also come with security concerns. They are iPads that connect to the internet to download the database of registered voters. How big a concern is that?
It's a huge concern. If you can deny someone access to the voting machine, then you move that person away from voting at that place at that time.
It is a proven target. In the run-up to the 2016 election, Russian hackers successfully broke into voter databases and software systems in 39 different states. Rick Barron is the Director of Registration and Elections in Fulton County. Do you have any evidence that in the midst of this chaotic election, hackers took advantage of those vulnerabilities and may have tampered with this election?
I have no evidence of that.
You really don't have the bandwidth or the capability of looking.
No, I mean, we're all that we can do is set up our own security around our equipment to mitigate the risks to it. We have cameras on our building, we have alarms on our building, we have the server is locked away as well.
The experts all agree paper ballots marked by hand are the most secure, most verifiable way of voting. More than 1 million Georgia voters chose to do this at home this election. For those who didn't receive their ballots or chose to vote in person, the expensive, complicated, vulnerable machines created a huge bottleneck at polling sites, and there were many fewer of them. In Fulton County, 34 sites opted out because of COVID-19 concerns. With Democrats turning out 4-1 over Republicans, it was a recipe for scenes like this. Long lines of African American voters. Corey Campbell waited 4 hours in South Fulton County.
I feel like they're just trying to discourage people of color or of minority to not vote, because that's the agenda that we're trying to push to especially younger people of color and minority. So, and it's very important. They know how important it is, so they'll do anything to throw a rock in the process.
With 4 to 5 million Georgians expected to vote in November, this primary election offers a stark warning of electoral chaos ahead. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Miles O'Brien in Atlanta.